Welcome to the Data Cloud Podcast, Chandi. We're delighted to have you with us.
Great to be here, Dana. Looking forward to it.
Me too. Now, the need to assemble and ingest a vast number of disparate data sources to build massive data sets allows Komodo Health to discover unprecedented insights across a wide range of life science and healthcare inquiries. The scale and velocity requirements are truly extraordinary. So tell us about Komodo Health. What's the company's mission, and how is it that data is so foundational to your work?
Yeah. At Komodo, we're on this mission of reducing burden of disease, and we do that by various ways. But before I tell you how we do it, let me tell you a little bit around how we were founded 11 years ago. Our founders, Arif and Webb, were working in the industry as consultants and were deeply aware of this problem of low quality data, and it would take too long to find insights. Sure, it was great job security as consultants, but they decided to solve for it. And 11 years later, we were one of the country's top, deep, and wide real world data set. Um, Data is absolutely foundation for our work. We've spent the past decade building this product we called Healthcare Map. And founders joke about this, but unfortunately, it's too true that there is abundance of information, but scarcity of insight. And what we've done with Healthcare Map and what we're doing these days on top of Healthcare Map is intended to solve for these two things. How do we give deep, rich insight of healthcare data, and how do we help our customers understand and utilize the insight from all of this data to work towards our mission of reducing the burden of disease.
So this is really the biggest of big pictures when it comes to health, from the individual up to the biggest type of population category. It seems like you really literally have your finger on the pulse of the world's health. Is that fair?
I have tried multiple times. My mother asked me what I do, and that is the best explanation of our work I've heard so far. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to use it.
Well, tell us about your particular role individually at Komodo, your background, and what motivates you to tackle such a large challenge and the ensuing opportunities that it brings.
I am Vice President of Product Management at Komodo Health. Been around industry for close to about 20 years in healthcare and life sciences data analytics. I have lived and breathed the complexity of data and trying to figure out how to make sense of the chaos and the complexity of a wide variety of data to make decisions. Like one of the complex things that I've seen in over 2 decades, I'm happy to report technology has been effectively used in this world to solve for simplicity is uh, the fact of the matter is it takes about 10 years for us to learn something works and for us to be able to actually use that learning in a prescribable treatment way. And it's close to about 2.6 to $3 billion between the two, as learning something that works and as being able to say, let's use it widely. Like 10 years and close to $3 billion is too much of a cost to know something works to make it, prescribable drug. And I've been through COVID times, and it has had drastic impact on me on what a single day could change in one, both, disease burden and um, my learning the past few years has been there are ways to reduce this gap. Going from 10 years to a year and a half is what we have seen with COVID drug and reciprocal cost reduction. And so application of real world data and real world evidence and application of cutting edge technology is proven to bring those two down, the time it takes for us to bring drugs, miracle drugs, if you will, and the cost down.
Great. Now, you mentioned the healthcare map, and as I understand it, something in the order of 330 million de-identified patients are included in this data set. And I can't even imagine the number of data points that is coming together. And by de-identifying the patients, you get access to more information, more data sources. So tell us a little bit about this whole process of ingestion and the many disparate real world data sources that you're using to put together this very impressive observation vehicle.
Our vision was never to create the biggest data set that there ever was, because our learning earlier on and our founders learning earlier on was big data came with quality issues. So the bigger numbers never meant better use. So we approached it, from a different viewpoint. Arif, one of the founders, is an MD doctor, um, and his view has always been about like how do we emphasize visibility into complex patient journeys. If you look at various disease conditions and if you look at various diseases, I'm sure you and the audience have heard about this concept called precision health. It's this vision that if we understand disease pathways and patient journeys very closely, we would build better drugs. And given how complex conditions like cancers are, it's very helpful to understand these diseases and the patient journeys the patients go through in a deep and richer way that helps us build this compelling view of how do we build the most effective treatment for a particular uh, uh, disease condition. The richness or the higher quality of it comes from us being able to view 3 out of 4 prescription events, more than half of the medical encounters, and that gives you this trustworthiness, and that gives you this high quality of the data. And just because how we've integrated various sources of data in this, it gives you what researchers love call longitudinality. So it's not a point of event of data. You're able to view this rich data set, 12, 14, 26 months of continued observation of a de-identified patient's journey. So some of the complexities that comes with incidental data, for example, when you and I go to a PCP, they get a point of time data. If I purely relied on that data, it would be 4 dots, maybe 5 dots in a particular year. Uh, and if you go to maybe a clinical trial, it's even more thinner slice of data, and it's even more disparate sources of data. And what we have done is built various degrees of depth into this and various types of data into this. So it gives you this deep, rich data set that you could learn more about. What did this person go through 6 months before I got the data, and how has the patient or a person has been 6 months after the data? So the richness of the data comes through when we do this initial homework of how do we establish the depth and how do we make it more longitudinal.
Mm-hmm. And just for clarity, for our audience, not everyone might be familiar with the constraints, but because of HIPAA and other myriad regulations and compliance requirements, that de-identification is important. So, in order to get the most and best data to identify trends at that larger perspective, you need to, as you say, de-identify. So maybe just clarify that so our audience understands why it's useful to do that and beneficial when it comes to the larger picture.
Legal, ethical, moral implications. Legal, obviously, being some of the things that you've mentioned. Every country has their own view of how they establish privacy rights. And there are also ethical and moral implications. For example, if you were to study a fatal disease It's just not ethical or moral to do a clinical trial. Patients are suffering. It's almost all the time a fatal condition. So both regulatories and pharmaceutical companies don't tend to study this disease in real life patients. So the moral implication is this: we have to identify a way to study this population so we can cure the condition. Now, the moral responsibility is how do we still enable that study in a non-identified way and do the ethically right thing, which is how do we solve for the disease without intruding on patient privacy? So
Mm.
various perspectives on the ethical,
Yep.
legal, and moral responsibility behind patient privacy.
Right, great. Thank you for clarifying that. Now, what were some of the large obstacles that you face when identifying and gather and ingest and making operational, making practical use of all of this data and these very diverse and large number of sources? So tell us about what you had to go through in order to make this rich, powerful data source effective and usable.
Yeah. Uh, web user jokes about this. So around 2010, uh, we went through this era of patient data explosion, meaning anyone and everyone who had the right went uh, uh, and acquired any and all data possible. And the result of the accumulation was that they focused on collecting volume of data, but the quality of the data went down, and it created this fragmented set of disconnected assets. And so to overcome all of this, we had to work on sophisticated algorithms, work on this entity resolution to resolve for disconnected entities, and a whole lot of correction of around bias in collection. And obviously, to some extent, the questions that you were asking around how do we do this in a privacy respecting way? Uh, De-identification was also another effort that was involved. So a combination of all of this, sophisticated algorithms, ability to resolve entities across these disconnected data assets, and all while spending a whole lot of time, love, and care around how to respect the privacy of patients.
Mhm.
And here we are. I speak about the moral imperative, but those are all the investments that we've done past 10
Yeah.
years to get to what we call healthcare map today.
And in this healthcare map, maybe you could give us for instance, of a fairly typical end-to-end journey of data from a source through the various algorithms and other processes that then allows you to make queries against it and get actionable insights. So, what's a fairly typical way in which an end-to-end journey of the data goes?
You're asking me $1 million question. uh, Maybe 350 plus $1 million question, I should say.
Uh,
Um, so some of the things I mentioned earlier on, algorithms to resolve entities, especially when we're trying to connect data from various entities that were not connected, and things that needed systematic network construction. So when a person switches from an employer to employer, there is a certain disconnection that happens in being able to view and track them across payers and across providers, people like healthcare networks, a hospital or a PCP you may go to, or two sets of employers may have different insurance providers. Right, so the work that we're doing across systematic network conversion or this entity resolution or bias correction uh, is helping us build this still de-identified but an individual level view or narration that makes it possible for researchers to understand this longitudinal patient journeys. And it also goes through various life cycle optimization. Uh, most of the complexity is in cleaning and linking that data. Two simple terms, but have taken millions of dollars and years of work to get and get right. And if you ask a few of our customers, that tell you uh, Komodo's healthcare map is the cleanest yet well-linked longitudinal journey of patients in US healthcare map.
Hmm. Of course, it's one thing to get the data. It's another to then try to optimize the life cycle of the data. So, you know, it's never a journey that's ended. You're always peeling back the onion, if you will, and finding new ways of trying to improve. So, how are you trying to optimize your data through its life cycle, and how is Snowflake helping you with that? And Snowflake's ecosystem, how do they accelerate your mission to having that cleanest but also very well functioning data?
We look at trillion, if not more than a trillion rows of data, and to people who are working with data understand you run a random query on trillion rows of data, like here you are sitting for a week to get the result of a malformed query. So this is where partners like Snowflake come into the picture. There are certain features or aspects of the business that are um, these are the features that you need to work to be able to operate in this business. You know, when you're working trillion rows of data, the richness, the speed, and the scale Snowflake brings us allows us to move away from how do I write or build queries that run in a performant way over a trillion rows, and our focus is more on how do we create cohorts that researchers are interested in, how do we enable fast insight into patient journeys, right? So the marriage of the two companies is this, effective realization of what the industry needs, help us identify condition, help us identify patient population, so on and so forth. That said, let me give you some specific examples. I'm sure there are some Snowflake fans out there that want to understand, help me understand specifically. Right. A Polaris catalog, an open source catalog that helps us distribute healthcare map. We do close to 400 plus data deliveries every month. Imagine trying to multiply trillion plus rows of data 400 times in very specific ways. So the data delivery by itself needs to be a few thousand people if Snowflake weren't it. So they bring the rigor of scale and reliability and compliance, mind you, given we're in a HIPAA compliant way. So we get that data governance compliance at scale of operations, even when we operate here. And a large percent of our customers are also customers of Snowflake. So looking at something like Snowflake SnowShare allows us to simply do, hey, here's what's changed from the last time we gave you the data to now, instead of us always packaging a trillion rows of data. Most recently, we've been enjoying what Cortex can do for us,
Hmm.
specifically around imagine the rigor and scale of the data pipelines that goes in and the complexity behind doing it 400 times a month at trillion rows to 300 plus customers. Cortex now allows us to simply write natural language queries about where did data go, to who, to what purpose, how was the data delivery, so on and so forth, without us having to write a whole lot of code to inspect a whole lot of code that we built in pipeline. So the perfect example of how do you run this scale of an operation without that scale of operation taking over our original mission. And that's what Snowflake is helping us do.
Okay. You mentioned the natural language. I should imagine that you'll want to increase over time the type of healthcare and life sciences researchers who can make the most use of your data. Are you moving towards helping them use natural language in how they access research and insights? I understand how you mentioned you're using Cortex to help optimize and scale the data, but how about from the end user perspective?
Yeah, firsthand, I've witnessed and I've been part, and I've started out as a developer in the industry. It's considered sunk cost, and the sunk cost here is if you have a complex question, the sunk cost is it's going to take a week, a month, and in some cases, more than a month's time to circle back to an answer to a complex question. And this is one of those other capabilities where we see we could have huge impact. And we recently launched what we call Marmot, Komodo Healthcare's analytic AI platform. And the idea behind is a simpleton idea. Um, some of the feedback I hear from our customers who get, the 330 million plus population healthcare data is that it takes too long for us to find insights from this data. It's complex, it's diverse. I need experts. I need people who can understand the business. I need people who can write code. I need the business person to talk to the person who writes the code. All of these weeks need to happen for me to get an answer. And the result was you get data from me on January 1st. Chances are March 15th, you're still looking around for an answer from one of the experts. And Marmot is our thoughtful way of bringing. We've done over 1 million of cohorts, and we've helped hundreds of customers solve for these analytical patterns over the last 11 years. And Marmot is our way into how do you enable a natural language interface to these deep, complex problems. And how do we, Komodo, with all of our expertise, distill it into bringing LLM excellence into how do we simplify answers to these questions? How do we shrink this 6 months, 3 month long wait period behind insight and data and shrink that into say, a handful of minutes? And what we hear today from our customers is what used to be the sunk cost of 3 months. I asked it too complex of a question is now 15 to 20 minutes of in playing around with Marmot.
Wow. That's very impressive. Can you provide perhaps some examples of how Marmot is uncovering things that were previously unattainable or not practical given the time constraints? So, is there I don't know, a use case that would help illustrate this incredible time compression that you described?
Yeah. This is a joy of working on Marmot and bringing Marmot to market. Um, I'm thinking about this one use case. Uh, the realization was one of our sponsors was looking for, we have better drug, and we're trying to understand how to direct it well. And what we've been able to help them with is providers were prescribing competitive therapies, and uh, the macro pattern we identified was uh, it wasn't being effective. Obviously, the providers would know few weeks, few months, maybe some quarters later, but we've been able to identify a pattern around how prescribing patterns were being ineffective because we can measure other attributes such as the industry term is HCRU, healthcare resource utilization. It's a proxy to how has patient condition improved after a specific therapy or a drug has been prescribed. And because depth and width of healthcare map, we can see the impact of a drug. And in this case, our study was that when prescribing a competitive therapy, it was being ineffective. So we taught this insight back to the sponsor we were helping with. And it's rich. It's 80% patient coverage. So 8 out of the 10 patients we were seeing it was being ineffective, and we helped the sponsor bring the right set of patients, or excuse me, right set of therapies to those group of patients.
You just opened my eyes to, there's so many variables involved with why a therapy would work or not work. And you're able to go in and distill out among them, what is or isn't working. And it's not always just what's, intuitive. There are the counterintuitive things that you can only see from that vantage point of the whole data. So that's very impressive. All right. Well, healthcare as a industry has been, I guess we could call them a slow industry to adopt sometimes new technologies, and perhaps artificial intelligence is among them. There's the issues of trust and compliance, but there's also perhaps just being tentative for something that's new. But it sounds like the implications of AI and data in this type of population level analysis is overwhelming. How is Komodo helping break down the barrier, if you will, of adopting some of these newer technologies and making them accepted as well as very prominent and useful?
And if you look at past 30, 40, 50 years of how clinical trial research and how drugs have been launched, most organizations have like turned the last knob in the org chart, in the talent, in available data, do the best they can, right? So I'm trying to say as much optimization as possible through tech, through existing tech, and through existing people and organization structures. Uh, some large organizations, well-funded, well-resourced, have gotten to a point where this is the best we can do with the tech we have and the people there is. But going back to the earlier discovery of there are 10,000 diseases and we solve for 50 in a year, something has to change and something has to give us this, this magical way to one, run analysis, understand deeply, empathize effectively, and bring drugs to the market. Right? So there is that willingness from pharma, given all the advancements that have occurred with AI past 12 to 24 months. And then there is the practical nature of pharma and life sciences and healthcare as industry is risk averse for the right reasons. They want it to be transparent, they want it to be compliant, they want it to be not a black box, and they want it to be explainable, especially when it comes to making decisions that affects people's health and healthcare, and in this case, large populations.
Right now, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to touch on what is presented to me from your last response is that there's a cultural aspect to this. And being an AI first or a data first organization can go a long way towards accepting, with the proper guardrails in place, some of these newer capabilities. So I assume that Komodo has an AI first, data first culture, but how do you see that broadening to your partners as well as, of course, your customers? So, do you see a cultural shift happening, and what have you done internally that works that others might learn from?
Komodo has been data first since our founding 11 years ago, and today it is absolutely an AI first culture. Um, we view AI not as a replacement, but as a way to amplify human expertise. For example, we established an AI council at work that focused on how do we bring AI fluency to we lovingly call Komodo people dragons, Komodo dragons. There's a pun in there somewhere.
Right.
Um, but all of this, it's not just we are pushing our customers to be AI first, but at the heart of Komodo, there is deep desire to be AI first and AI fluent, and we're spending the money, the tools, and the processes that need to change to bring AI fluency to every dragon at Komodo.
All right. Well, we certainly have covered a lot today, Chandi. I really appreciate it. Last question. Everything is moving very fast, of course, with AI and data. But in healthcare, where do you think the industry is heading, and what's next for Komodo? What can we put our crystal ball in front of our listeners and say, here's what you can expect from some of this legwork and very important investments that have been made so far?
I started with the it takes too long and it is too expensive to bring researched products into patients' hands. The reason it is because it is a whole lot laborious, burdensome process, both for healthcare and for research. And AI has proven that it can take off some of the low impact operational work out of people's hands. It should be an incredible lever in speeding up the 10-year process. It should be an impactful force in bringing the cost down. Now, marry this with real world data and real world evidence. Now you have a technology that meets the depth and rigor of someone like a regulatory body, and for pharma to wield this power, both of the tech and of the data, to influence, some of the things that we've taken for granted. So future is a whole lot agentic driven, a whole lot humans doing high impact work, humans asking tough questions, and it not being high cost or high time consuming.